My name is Michael Reed, and for a large part of my life, I thought I owed nothing to anyone, not even God. I grew up hearing that everyone has to fight for what is theirs, and I took that phrase too far, to a point where the line between surviving and destroying ceased to exist within me. Today, I don't know if there's a gentle way to say this, because there's nothing gentle about acknowledging who I was. I was convicted of murder. Not by accident, not in self-defense, but because I chose to take someone's life, and for a long time, I carried that truth as if it were a trophy of courage instead of a death sentence for my own soul. It was as if admitting what I did shielded me from any feeling of guilt. I repeated to myself that the world was cruel and that I was just adapting to it. But the truth is that I didn't adapt. I lost myself. The worst prison was never the concrete cell where I spent years locked up. The worst prison was always the silence inside my mind when I laid my head on the pillow and all the justifications I created during the day no longer made sense. I used to say that everything I did had a reason, that I only reacted to the hard life that pushed me towards crime. I tried to believe it. I tried to repeat that story so many times that it almost became true for me. However, when you are alone and have no one to impress, the mask falls. There, without applause, without followers, without allies, without weapons, the echo of conscience becomes too loud to be ignored. There are things we can hide from the world, but never from ourselves. I knew my hands were stained with blood. I knew my choices had destroyed more than just bodies. They had destroyed families, memories, futures. And even knowing this, I kept walking as if I were untouchable, as if nothing could reach me. On the outside, I was steel. On the inside, dust. Deep down, I was just afraid to face the truth. I had lost the ability to feel. And when a man loses that, he loses everything. But I thought my story would end in that prison. I was wrong. Very wrong. Because my true judgment did not take place before an earthly judge. The real judgment awaited me after death. If this story has already stirred something in you, don't leave the video. Subscribe and like to see what happens next, because this is not fiction. It's a warning. When I think about the life I led before prison, it feels like I'm observing a stranger, someone hiding behind such a well-constructed mask that even I couldn't see where the disguise ended and where the emotional emptiness that consumed me began. Crime didn't enter my life on a specific day. It infiltrated slowly, like a fog that covers everything until you can no longer distinguish right from wrong. In the beginning, I said I did what I needed to survive. But the truth is, I became addicted to the feeling of power that arose every time someone was afraid of me. It wasn't just about money or control. It was about feeling that I was finally someone, that my name echoed in the alleys, and that fear gave me importance. This distorted feeling fed me, and the more recognition I received within that world, the more I needed to prove that I deserved to be respected. Dirty money started rolling in quickly, and along with it came cars, parties, women, and everything that seems like freedom to someone trapped inside. With each deal closed, each threat made, each life pressured by my decisions, I felt like I was climbing a mountain of superiority. Crime offered me such a strong illusion that I truly believed breaking rules made me invincible. I convinced myself I had beaten the system, when in reality, I was just another slave to it. The adrenaline rush of having a gun strapped to my hip was like an extension of my body, and the way people lowered their gaze when I passed by fueled the feeling that I had finally found my place in the world. I used to think, nobody bosses me around. But deep down, it was sin that guided me, like a ventriloquist, and I was just the obedient puppet. The deeper I delved into that life, the more I realized it wasn't money that kept me there, but the addiction to feeling feared. No matter how much power you think you have, sin always exacts its price, and it demands a high one. I just never imagined that the price would be paid with my soul. Today I see something I previously ignored. The devil never appears offering chains. He appears offering freedom. And when you realize it, you can no longer escape. And now I need to ask you, are you choosing power or are you choosing peace? Comment. I want peace, not power. Because sin always opens a door. And mine opened hell. I remember exactly the day everything changed, as if someone had flipped a switch inside me and locked the last door separating me from any trace of humanity. Until that moment, I was just another lost young man following orders from crime, trying to prove I deserved respect. But there was still a limit, a thread, as thin as the line between good and evil. When they handed me the gun and said I needed to resolve a situation, I felt my heart beat fast, not from fear, but from anticipation. It was as if that whole dark world had prepared me for that moment, and I understood that from then on, nothing would be the same. The first time I held that gun, I felt such an absurd power coursing through my veins that, for a moment, I almost convinced myself that it was alive in my hands, as if it had a will of its own, as if it were leading me to something I couldn't yet understand. When I pulled the trigger, the sound seemed to echo not only in the street where we were, but inside me. I expected regret. I expected to feel nausea, fear, guilt, or despair. But what came was a completely different sensation. It was as if an enormous silence invaded my chest, tearing away the last spark of sensitivity that still existed. Instead of remorse, I felt a wave of power that made me believe I had finally taken control of my life. The instant the person's body fell, I saw no pain, no blood, no humanity. I saw only victory. I saw the confirmation that I was strong enough to decide who lived and who died, and that destroyed me inside without me even realizing it. After that day, something inside me died, something I never recovered. The guilt vanished, the empathy evaporated, and emptiness became my daily companion. It was no longer the money, nor the respect, nor the crime itself that motivated me. It was the feeling of power that sin offered me. I didn't know it, but at that moment I had opened a door that could no longer be closed. And that door had a destination on the other side, a destination I never imagined I would face. Because when sin opens a door, something from the outside begins to walk toward it. After that first shot, life lost all color, as if every sensation had been ripped out at the root, leaving only the shell of someone I could no longer recognize. Before, when I made a mistake, there was still a silent conflict within me, a discomfort that tried to remind me that I was human. But after crossing that line, consciousness became a distant, weakened, irrelevant noise. I walked the streets feeling as if I were anesthetized, and when I looked at people, I didn't see human beings with stories, memories, family, a future. I only saw obstacles, bargaining chips, tools I could manipulate to maintain the control I believed I possessed. When I received orders to attack someone, I no longer questioned. I simply executed, as if I were a machine programmed to obey evil without any interference from the heart. Indifference took hold of me so deeply that when mothers wept before the body of their child, or when someone begged not to die, I felt irritation instead of compassion. Irritation because their fear exposed me. Irritation because their crying seemed to try to tear from me something I no longer possessed. My laughter became cold, heavy, almost diabolical. I felt superior, as if I had conquered a level of strength that placed me above any human emotion. I began to mock everything, especially God. When someone spoke of sin, I would reply that hell must have plenty of space, because I would need it. I thought I was being bold, but today I realized that I was only sinking, faster and faster, into an abyss that I myself had dug. Indifference didn't arrive like an explosion. It arrived like a poison, drop by drop, until I stopped feeling anything. When someone died, I didn't see blood. I saw efficiency. When someone suffered, I didn't hear groans. I heard weakness. The pain of others no longer touched me, and that destroyed me in a way that not even prison could. It's terrible when the heart turns to stone, because the soul turns to dust. And the worst part is that I still believed I was in control. That's when something started to happen. Something I couldn't explain. Something that began to haunt me relentlessly from within, as if the evil I harbored had finally decided to claim what was rightfully hers. Because when the soul becomes insensitive, hell ceases to be a destination and begins to be a path. Death didn't come to me like in the movies, with dramatic music or an elegant fade-out. It came in the most banal and humiliating way possible, in the place where I swore nothing could surprise me anymore. The federal penitentiary had its own smell, a mixture of despair, sweat, and rusted metal. And every morning, I woke up believing that this was just another day where I needed to prove I was strong enough to survive in there. The block where I was serving my sentence seemed to breathe violence, and anything, a misinterpreted glance, a comment in a raised tone, or even the simple fact of someone being in the way, could turn into war. I was used to threats, to improvised knives hidden in mattresses, to eyes watching my every step, but I never thought the end would be so silent and so quick. That day, I was shoved into the yard during the guard's shift change. It was the tensest moment of the day, when the rules seemed to evaporate and everyone looked around like predators searching for exposed weaknesses. I'd been arguing with another inmate for weeks, and that day, words became weapons. The scream that escaped his mouth echoed through the concrete like an invisible gunshot, and before I could move, I felt an impact on my chest. A blow so deep it felt like it had pierced not only my body, but my soul. I looked down and saw the makeshift blade embedded in my uniform. There was no time to react, only an absurd awareness that my body was losing life, while my mind struggled to cling to any thought that proved I still had control. The icy ground touched my back like a final sentence, and I realized something I had never considered. No matter how hard I tried to be strong, there are things that are too big for human strength. As blood trickled down the fabric, I felt the despair of someone who, for the first time, realizes they were in absolutely no control. I tried to breathe, I tried to speak, I tried to convince myself that this was just another battle I would win. But each attempt was weaker than the last. I was surrounded by voices, but none of them could reach me. The darkness didn't arrive slowly. It swallowed me like a wave breaking without warning. That's when I had a certainty I never imagined I'd have. I was dying. And the scariest thing is that, when I died, I remained conscious. When darkness engulfed me, I imagined that would be the last sensation I would ever have, as if the end of everything would simply be ceasing to exist. But what happened next was something no human being is prepared for. Instead of disappearing, I realized my consciousness remained active. The first sensation I had was weightlessness, as if my body had been switched off and I had become pure perception. I heard the sound of the guard's footsteps running and the metallic clatter of keys against the bars. I heard voices that seemed distant and yet extremely close, like echoes inside a tunnel. Something in me knew I was dead, but another part couldn't accept what was happening. When I tried to open my eyes, I realized I could already see, but not in a natural way. It was as if my eyes were no longer located in the face I had carried all my life, but somewhere beyond any physical location, as if I were observing everything through my own consciousness. I saw my body lying lifeless on the courtyard floor while the nurses tried to resuscitate it, and that produced in me a mixture of horror and disbelief. My body was there, but I was no longer in it. I tried to shout their names, tried to say that I was okay, that I was there, that I could hear everything, but my voice wouldn't come out because I no longer had a voice. I tried to touch the shoulder of one of the paramedics, but my hand passed through his uniform as if it were just smoke. The feeling of helplessness was so absolute that I felt as if I were sinking into a void where nothing could be controlled. I could see, hear, and feel, but I couldn't interfere with anything. It was like watching my own death trapped inside a transparent bubble that separated me from everything I had tried to control for years. The absence of physical pain should have been a relief. But the dread of having no control over my existence was incomparably worse than any blow or gunshot I had ever received. As I watched my body being carried through the cold corridors of the infirmary, I felt something I had never experienced in the life I had chosen. Real fear. Not the fear of dying, but the fear of continuing to exist without knowing where that existence would lead me. When the heart monitor began to emit that continuous sound, indicating that there was no longer a pulse, I realized that at that exact moment I was being left behind, as if the earth had switched me off and something greater had claimed me. It was then that a presence formed behind me, silent and powerful, filling the space with an authority that no word on earth could define. And in that moment, I knew I was not alone. The presence that appeared behind me wasn't accompanied by bright light or any celestial effect, like those we usually imagine when we think of God. There were no fireworks, no choir, no gentle atmosphere of welcome. The feeling was one of absolute authority, something so intense it seemed to pierce through everything I had ever built as an emotional shield, as if every layer of hardness, cynicism, and arrogance were effortlessly ripped away. I turned around, and no matter how hard my mind tried to comprehend what was before me, I knew that no human understanding could translate that presence. I didn't need anyone to tell me it was Jesus. My spirit recognized him even before my consciousness accepted the reality of what I was seeing. There was no judgment through words, only through truth. His eyes did not reflect hatred, but something much deeper and more devastating, absolute purity. It was as if, before him, lies had no place to exist. My first reaction was to try to justify everything, as I always did, because throughout my life I learned to hide behind excuses, behind harsh stories, behind traumas that I transformed into a shield. I began to say that I had no choice, that the world was cruel to me, that I only adapted to survive, that no one ever extended a hand when I needed it. I wanted him to understand that I wasn't the only one to blame, that I only reacted to life. Jesus looked at me, and his silence was heavier than any sentence. He didn't raise his voice, didn't change his expression, didn't show impatience. He simply asked, so simply and directly that my justifications crumbled like broken glass, "Did they pull the trigger or did you?" The question wasn't laden with accusation, and perhaps that's precisely why it hit me with such a profound and unavoidable impact. I tried to find an answer that didn't exist, and at that moment, I understood that while on earth I had manipulated the narrative, there was no narrative there, only truth. He didn't say I was evil. He didn't say I was a criminal. He didn't say I was a murderer. I realized I was all of that when I saw my own sin reflected in the holiness that stood before me. While I was trying to find a defense to support my story, he simply reached out, and everything around me changed. It wasn't just my life being shown like a movie. It was my soul being exposed. He showed me every choice, every act, every opportunity for repentance that I ignored. I realized that throughout my life I had choices, and in most of them, I chose evil. I wasn't being condemned for something God did against me. I was facing the consequences of everything I had done against him. Nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to see. He reached out his hand, and the scene around me shifted as if time had been ripped from its axis. There were no walls, floor, or direction, only a space where every truth existed naked, without shadow, without disguise, without the capacity to be masked by human justifications. I was thrown into a kind of environment I can't call a place, because it didn't resemble anything that exists on Earth. It was as if I was surrounded by a void that simultaneously felt heavy, dense, suffocating, and the absence of any sound was so absolute that it seemed to scream. Within my own consciousness, suddenly, images began to form before me, and I wasn't just seeing memories. I was being forced to feel what I had caused. I saw people I had hurt. I saw faces I had tried to forget, and I saw tears I never bothered to wipe away. Tears I had ignored as I went on my way, as if my sin had no echo. Jesus didn't point, didn't accuse, didn't shout. He simply let the truth speak. I saw a child embracing the body of her dead father, and I felt her despair pierce me, like a blade tearing from within. I saw a mother scream, begging God to return the son I had taken from her, and I realized that while I continued living, she remained trapped in that moment, unable to move forward because my sin had frozen time for her. I saw destinies that never happened. I saw birthdays that were never celebrated, weddings that would never take place, children who would never be conceived. I understood that I hadn't just taken lives. I had interrupted futures. And Jesus said, with a firmness that wasn't in tone but in truth, "You thought you only took bodies, but you destroyed stories that I wrote before the world existed." An overwhelming awareness took hold of me. The pain didn't come from outside. It came from within, as if every fragment of my soul was being pressed down by the full weight of the choices I had made. The absence of God in that space was like a spiritual desert, a solitude so profound that it made any physical suffering seem insignificant. There was no fire burning my body. There was awareness burning my existence. The torment wasn't imposed, it was revealed. Hell wasn't a punishment decided by God, it was the natural consequence of the life I chose to live far from Him. Then I understood, with a clarity I had never experienced before, that God wasn't sending me away from Him. It was I who had walked away with each choice, each sin, each "I don't need God" that I declared with my actions. And when everything inside me seemed to be falling apart, something unexpected happened. When everything seemed sealed, when I had already accepted that this would be my eternity, the scene began to dissolve like smoke, carried by a wind I couldn't feel, but could perceive, came from a place where life existed. The presence of Jesus remained before me, and there were no more images, no pain, no revelation of my past. There was only a silence so profound that it seemed to contain within it questions I never had the courage to ask. I didn't understand what was happening, because I knew I deserved nothing but the consequences of the life I chose. And yet, something began to change in the space around me. The darkness that had previously suffocated me began to lose density, as if it were losing the right to keep me imprisoned. And I felt a warmth that wasn't physical. It was as if I were being reached by something I had spent my whole life rejecting. Mercy. Jesus didn't ask me if I wanted a second chance. He didn't give me conditions. He didn't demand promises. He simply looked at me, and in His gaze I understood that true repentance isn't a spoken phrase, it's surrender. I didn't ask for forgiveness with arguments. I simply crumbled. I recognized that I had destroyed lives, interrupted destinies, wasted opportunities, and ignored all of God's attempts to reach my heart. I felt my pride dissolve like a sandcastle battered by constant waves, and in that instant I finally understood that there is no salvation where there is justification, because whoever tries to justify sin still hasn't understood the weight of what they've done. There was no exploding light, no voice echoing in the sky, only a sudden return, as if I had been thrown back into my body. My eyes opened in the hospital, and the first thing I felt wasn't physical pain. It was shame. A shame so overwhelming that my whole body trembled. I didn't cry out of fear. I cried because I understood the value of life in that instant when I almost lost eternity. When I was able to get up and leave the hospital, I did something no one expected. I sought out the families. I asked for forgiveness. I didn't expect absolution. I only expected to sow truth where I had planted destruction. What I experienced didn't just change my destiny, it changed my essence. I know many people watch stories like mine expecting to find dark details or some kind of spiritual sensationalism. But what I need you to understand is that none of that matters in the face of the truth that reached me when I was on the brink of eternity. After I returned, Each choice took on a different weight, because I finally understood that life is not a rehearsal, it is a unique passage, and each decision we make today writes a chapter that will continue to echo after the heart stops beating. Hell wasn't made for people, but the distance from God is built by every step we take, distancing our soul from that which was created to be light. There is no neutrality, because while you don't choose, your lack of choice is already choosing for you. If there's one thing I learned in that place between life and death, it's that no one can deceive God. We can deceive friends, family, society, and even ourselves, but no mask can withstand the gaze of one who sees what is hidden within the heart. I didn't return to ask for pity. I returned because mercy reached me before judgment was final. And I need to tell you that there is still time, because if God gave me a second chance, despite everything I did, then no life is too far from His reach. If this message touched you in any way, do something for your soul right now. Write in the comments, "God, change my story while there's still time." And before leaving, subscribe to the channel, because each video here could be the next opportunity for God to speak to you when you least expect it.